All right, everybody, welcome back to CAG Chat. I'm Sherman with Citizens for Accountability and Governance, joined with my co-hosts Levon, Tanya, Derek, and Donna. Tonight's conversation is about preparedness. Over the last several weeks, Prince George's County residents experienced what many describe as confusion, delays, and a lack of clear coordination during the winter storm event Fern and the Snowcrete that followed. We heard from seniors who could not leave their homes, from residents who waited days for passable roads, and from families who felt left in the dark about what was happening and when help was coming. The question we're asking tonight is not who to blame. The question is, what should a prepared response look like? And how do communities adapt when weather patterns are changing and emergencies are no longer rare events? To help ground this conversation in real world experience, we're joined tonight by members of the Black Emergency Managers Association International and the founder and CEO Charles Sharp, Mark Dozier, and Louis Alyssa, all emergency managers with decades of knowledge and experience combined. So I definitely want to bring them on screen. Let me give a second. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome,
My
awesome.
pleasure.
So this conversation is for residents, community leaders, and anyone who wants to understand what preparedness actually looks like beyond press conferences. Thank you for joining us tonight. Can we first go around the room? I'll start with Charles. Give us a brief bio of who you are and what do you do, and if it applies, let us know what's a major disaster you've been a part of that we may know about.
Oh, I wanted Mark to go first.
Oh, okay. Well, Mark, if you would go ahead and lead the way for us.
Absolutely. Mark Dozier. I'm the CEO of Critical Path Solutions. We're a preparedness firm that ensures that government and commercial entities can open no matter what. I am 35 years in the industry, founding member of the Department of Homeland Security. Before there was the Department of Homeland Security, I worked for the Office for Domestic Preparedness in the Department of Justice. I've been doing this for a long time, ensuring that preparedness efforts actually meet the outcome of the threat and actually what people need to do to ensure that they can keep moving. So we've worked all over the world. We've worked with just about every government agency that there is, and we try to stay one step ahead of our adversaries and like you said, the changing threat posture.
Mhm. Thank you so much. And Charles.
Since Lewis isn't on the line, I'll go. My name
Thank
is
you.
Charles Sharp. I've been in this for over 50 years. Um, I started out very young at 16, knowing about, the national response, to nuclear attack. And I served 25 years in the military as an emergency manager. I was an inspector general, so I've done threat vulnerability assessments and set up emergency operations centers, exercise design and development. My major two bases that I worked at were at uh, Joint Base Andrews and Anacostia Bowling. But as an inspector general, I traveled all throughout that's continental U.S., inspecting National Guard and active duty bases for to ensure that they were ready. And I was the type that colonels, full words, or generals would say, go in and make the unit, get them up to par. I was the one that would go in and get them up to par, looking at every aspect of what they did, from even their training and going back to their instructors saying, you need to change this. So the military was just one part. When I retired, some individuals decided, hey, let's start this association. And we didn't want BEMA, the Black Emergency Managers Association, to be separate as professionals in Homeland Security and emergency management. We felt that the whole of community need to be members of our association because we wanted the youth and others to know the importance of emergency management that affects everyday life. So even when you talk about certain, we'll talk about that probably later on, that in a sense, it started in LA, but that also was a part of what we did in the military. Facility ownership, community ownership, get involved and engage. There's a lot more than what we do. And if you want more, go to our website, just type Google Black Emergency Managers and it should pop up.
Thank you so much. So I definitely wanted to ask some questions for I brought you all because of course of the incident that just happened here across the DC region and for actually a few states thereafter. But one of the key phrases that we kept hearing from everyone, especially here in Prince George's County, was um, the phrase unprecedented. And what we have to understand is that unprecedented is becoming the new normal. So, what's the danger of treating every disaster as unprecedented?
Mark?
Like,
Yeah.
if I could go first, yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say that a weather event such as snow and ice is unprecedented. We had over a week to prepare. I think this region in general is lacking in the ability to remove snow. I think what was new about this is that we had snow and then we had ice and then we had more snow. So that was definitely different. But there's a way to pick up the phone and call jurisdictions that are used to this kind of weather and ask, hey, what is the first thing that we put down once we removed the snow to fight the ice? That was really the problem in this particular storm, is that we weren't prepared for the ice covering of the 3, 6, 7 inches of snow. But again, in a world where we can be across the world in 12 hours, we should be able to call a jurisdiction in Michigan that does this in their sleep and understand what kind of beet juice mixture or whatever treatment it takes to put on the roads to not be flat footed. Further than that, I mean, if you drove I'm a Prince George's County resident. If you drove the roads, you would think that the snowplow drivers were all drinking because they couldn't seem to plow straight and roads would just end suddenly. And it was amazing. So I think that my disappointment stemmed from we couldn't even do the basic response correctly. And knowing that this was an event that we weren't used to. I mean, many of us probably tried to buy snow blowers and things, but we won't need them for another 4 years. So why purchase them, right? But in
Mhm.
that instance, we had 4 years since the last storm to really understand what it takes to be prepared when we get a wallop like this. And that was unfortunate because, again, every disaster is local. So, to your point, I think we need to get rid of terms like unprecedented, right? We don't even want to work from unprecedented. We've always tried to train people that if you are prepared for your most likely scenario, you're prepared for anything. And so again, snow is a likely scenario. Lots of things that can happen in the county are likely scenarios, but the weather service made it clear exactly what was going to happen.
Mhm.
So there should be no reason why we weren't prepared for the equipment that we had and then being able to ask other jurisdictions how we could do better.
And
Thank you.
I like to add one of the things when you look at threat and vulnerability analysis, when you do that, you look at what if scenarios. And one thing that did occur, and Mark mentioned weather. The weather service was giving out his information. That's good. And and one thing I talked about, and someone else is online, Mr. Reverend Richard Keller, the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, they usually have a meeting, usually 6 hours before the storm arrives to discuss what are the jurisdictions going to be doing. And I didn't attend it. I was going to watch this play out. But even I noticed, I live in Montgomery County, but I have family members, and I grew up partially in Prince George's County. So I know Prince George's County. And I had the feeling, do these drivers know what they're doing is plowing the snow? That really, really, it dumbfounded. I was just dumbfounded by that.
Mhm.
Do they really know what they're doing? And Mark had mentioned even the environmental concerns in laying down the preparedness for the snow and ice using beet juice, Mark.
Yes.
You have to look at not only addressing the immediate issue, and saving lives, what are the plans for the hospitals when this occurs? The fire department to get to people if something occurs. You have
Mhm.
to look at the after effects, the
Yeah.
environmental effects, because that's going to be hitting.
Yeah.
What are some of the environmental effects of this snow that's piled up? How
Mhm.
will it contaminate water sources? This is something that we look at. We look at the entire process, the entire system, and not just one part. And the first part is families. Are you prepared? That's the key. Are you prepared? Do you know what you're going to do in your residence, in your home? Do you know what services you need that immediately within the block radius? Are you
Yeah.
going to cut? Are you going to clear up and remove the snow from the fire hydrant?
And Charles, really, really quick, when it comes to preparedness and disasters, what was okay? The recommended time was 3 days before the government was going to get to you. What is it now?
Before the government, that can change based on the
Mhm.
market. But that's debatable. That is
Mhm.
debatable. Nothing is
So,
unprecedented, but that's debatable, and it depends on.
right.
And I'm just going to say this: we also look at other events, after actions, and what occurred at other events in other jurisdictions, not only here in the U.S., but I look at globally. One of the things I'm going to mention was when the hurricane hit the Bahamas, the power company did something that was unusual. They told all their workers, take care of your families first before you come to work. And they recovered quicker. They recovered quicker because of that. That showed caring. They care. It's not just about the numbers sometimes, it's about caring about others and making sure that those individuals are taken care of. I'm ex-military. Those who are ex-military, if you were deployable, you had to ensure your
Mhm.
family had plans. And that's the key. So 3 days, they've shifted to five after Puerto Rico and other events. Can the government get there with all the shortages and cuts that are going on in personnel? You know, that's something that, we tell people prepare for the worst case.
Mhm.
So,
And
Sherman, if
with
I
that in mind, how does that equate to, I mean, because that's a federal level. What about local? Because we're starting to see local responses are even taking quite a bit of time to get to, its citizens and residents as well. So what's something that, that should be in that emergency preparedness kit or something that should be in your house that we would never would think of?
So, Sherman, if we could just take a step back so folks can
Sure.
actually understand the
Hmm.
response process, right, and how we
Sure.
arrived here. So, before 9/11, again, the government wasn't really putting money into what we call preparedness. There was a
Hmm.
FEMA, and before FEMA, there was a civil defense. But we didn't begin to really fund preparedness from the federal level until after 9/11. And then billions of dollars went into what we now know as Homeland Security. And so over the years, that money has begun to dwindle. And so, just like you said, um, when you look at response from a local level, that money was from the federal government. Maryland has received a lot of money being part of the national capital region. And so, as that money dwindles, let's be very blunt about the current occupant, of 1600 Pennsylvania, has made it clear that Maryland is really persona non grata with our governor. And so when you say 5 to 7 days, they may not come at all because we're in Maryland. And so we have to understand the way that the world is. And this administration has decided not to release FEMA funds to blue states. And they have actually denied FEMA funds even to Governor Huckabee in Arkansas, which was his secretary from his first. So, understanding that the response apparatus that most of us knew and could get our hands around, with that being gone, everything changes. And like you said at the beginning of the uh, conversation, it's not about blame, it's about the reality of what we live in and being able to ensure that we can do what it takes tomorrow. So, understanding that the ways of old are gone like you said, what's necessary? Well, let's just look at what's, again, the most likely scenario, a weather event. So we had snow. So we saw everyone lined up at Costco getting gas. What's the point of having gas if we can't drive anywhere? Let's look at the things that we actually, I mean, maybe gas for a generator in your house if you're lucky enough. Hey, great
Mhm.
to all the power companies for keeping the power running. That in itself was amazing, right?
Mhm.
And so the fact that our infrastructure actually worked during this, but then think about that. What would you have needed? Candles, blankets, things you couldn't, maybe battery operated or hand cranked space heaters, those kind of things, canned goods. We have to think what happens. We're so dependent on technology, right? We go, oh, what's open, and we grab our phone. Well, if we can't charge our phone, how are we going to know, right?
And how we're going to
We
communicate.
That's exactly right. So I mean, and none of us know how to use carrier pigeons or the telegraph or anything like that. So we've got to get back to, just like what Charles said, knowing our neighbors and understanding, what it is, who on the block needs the most help, who's a diabetic, who's insulin. I mean, at least it was cold enough that, maybe if you had insulin, it wasn't going to spoil or anything like that. Who's got things in their garage? I mean, these are the things that community groups and subdivisions need to come together, because when you start thinking of, is the government coming, right? We can look back to big, like the wildfires in LA, the wildfires in Hawaii, Hurricane Katrina, those kind of things where everybody was in the Superdome, and could we, in this environment today, survive that? Right? Think if everyone suddenly had to make their way to, Capital One Arena, or the Prince George's County Community College, and be inside the gymnasium. Are we going to be able to, to weather that kind of thing? But most of us couldn't even get out of our driveways. So how are we going to rescue? They're still talking about, almost 2 weeks after the storm, that fire engines can't get in communities.
Yeah, that was actually a fire in one of the communities for one of the members in our group. I don't have that video, but they eventually, got a contractor to come through to clear the snow out of the way. But that's a huge concern. And as Charles mentioned earlier, not many people know or remember to clear out the fire hydrants. And,
Right.
they're all throughout our communities, and somebody may need them as we see. But I want to zoom out now, and we can talk about some of the snow later because I want to get some stuff from Lewis, since I believe Charles, you said he works in Boston or has worked in Boston.
I don't know if Lewis is on the line, but you also had Reverend Richard Kelly. He's on there also,
Hmm.
and he used to be in the D.C. area, and he was on one of the faith-based committees, if I'm right, Richard, for the Washington Council of Governments, so that
Hmm.
that response is there. He's
Hmm.
ex-military, so he
Hmm.
really understands that. I don't know if Lewis is on there. I don't see his name yet.
No
But
problem.
Richard
I
can
can
get some input also because he's in Chicago.
okay, well,
So
yeah, let me add Richard on. Okay, just give me 1 second.
all right. Imagine the weather they get in Chicago,
Hmm.
how they
Oh,
approach it within their area.
exactly.
So let's see.
Well,
And
while
and
we
Chicago,
wait on him, I have a question. When I was working for the school system, we had started a committee to work with the county and the school system, and we were putting together a preparedness plan. And I'd like to know if that ever manifested itself into, because there were dollars put aside and we were trying to combine efforts and get locations and make sure information was out to the public about what you have. My stuff is still in my basement. I do need to update it though, because I'm not going to eat
which
canned foods that are 10 years old. But be that
you
as
were
it
looking
may.
at Prince George's County. I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yes, Prince George's
Okay.
County. It was,
Okay.
I worked at the school system and we had a committee in including Prince George's County to work together to try to put a preparedness plan in place. And that was, that started. We had several meetings, but I don't know what happened with it because I'm no longer working there. But I was just wondering if that group, that coalition of county people, state people, and the school board were meeting to try to come up with what is exactly needed, because a lot of people don't know what they should be doing, and to be able to prepare themselves for at least a week, but two was more of the guidelines. We wanted people to, have the information that they needed, and to basically even run drills. So I was just wondering if that initiative is still happening.
I'm sorry, Charles, you go ahead.
I wanted to say there is something, and I think when you talk about emergency management for schools, not just Prince George's County, but nationally. And you can Google this and look at Department of Education, emergency management for schools, K-12 and higher education. The planning is supposed to be there.
Yes.
For exactly what you're talking about. But that takes coordination of your local school jurisdiction, Board of Education, and everyone involved has to be in this, the whole community, to say, hey, what are we going to do if this happens? After 9/11, most parents couldn't get to their kids if they worked a distance away from where their kids went to school or in daycare. We were emphasizing daycare should have plans, evacuation plans.
Yes, absolutely.
School systems, let's go historically and what recently happened. The shooter in DC, there were plans. What if scenarios? And that comes with coordinating, partnering, and collaborating, bringing everyone into the room and say, these kids are important. We have to look at plans every year. The school, even the unions have to get involved. You see how now others are getting involved? The teachers' unions have to get involved and say, we have to save lives and protect our most important asset, our next generation leaders. So it's not something that can be summed up in one sentence. It's a matter of getting everyone in the room and saying, we have to protect our youth locally. All disasters and crises initially are local. What are we going to do? Now, some parents may say, oh, my kids are out of this high school. No, but why did you live in that community? Because of the school system. So no matter where you're at, these plans have to be put in place across the board in every sector.
Thank you so much, Charles. And so,
if I could just add to that, Sherman, real quick. I know you're trying to bring Reverend Keller in, but this is really important to what Ms. Goodman asked. So plans as we know it are dead, okay? Charles speaks from a place where we should be, and I love that, right? He's going to get us to the promised land, but I work where we are. And so I can tell you that we have planned for just about anything that you can imagine. Unfortunately, again, because everything goes from the top down, even though people love to say every disaster is local, listen, it's an unfunded mandate, right? So again, I could say to all of you, here's the list, but if you don't have the money to buy it, are you going to buy it? If you don't have money to buy a generator, are you going to buy a generator? So I could tell you duct tape your house. I could tell you to buy eggs that don't expire. If you don't have the money, it doesn't matter. So plans are dead. Okay. So plans are dead. We had a great plan for the pandemic. Been exercising it since 2016 all over the country. 1 million Americans dead because the occupant of the White House wanted to rip up the plan. So we have to go back to the tail end of what Charles said. And that's understand why we are where we are and what we need to do to work together to advance it. The government as we know it, remember, all the things that Ms. Goodman pointed out, those people really that used to be the glue of FEMA.
Mhm.
That used to be the glue of presidential directives that came out from the White House. That's all dead. If they're erasing Black history,
Mhm.
do you think that they care about Black lives? So we've got to really begin to understand the reality of where we are for survival. And
Exactly.
Charles speaks, that's exactly right. But we can't just say, yes, check this box. We've got to get more creative and more understanding, just like when Sherman said, what's something most people don't think of meals ready to eat? We call it MREs in the military, but
Make sure you
most
get the hot sauce.
right, exactly. Or just, get a can of sardines. I just learned about herring from Amazon and I love them. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
working out great. I'm not going to starve, but that's important for us to start
So,
realizing about the
And one thing, you remember the derecho that hit the DC area years ago, where we lost power around the whole DC area, and I think it was in the spring. And one of the things I was going around, people were just driving around, and I asked people, "What is the most important thing you need?" And I talked to, and one thing I look at, even in the snow, any type of crisis, you need a central point of where you're going to meet. They tell you to pick a location where you're going to meet. And I was asking gas station owners, do you have a generator? Why? You sell food, you sell gas. That is a central location in a lot of communities where you can come there, charge your phones, get your phones charged, find out information what's going on that's not being broadcasted. So when I come out, you know, I look for the ideal. That's just who I am. But I also look at what's practical, what's actually going on out here. What's going on?
thank you so much. And
I
so,
just want to mention
Rick,
one
thank you
more
so much for
thing,
coming
guys.
on.
One
Donna,
more
no more
thing,
one
real
things,
quick.
love. No more one things. Listen.
Mhm.
Thank you for your question. All right.
Hold it, hold it.
Yes, write it down. When you look at prolonged snow and ice events, Rick, like what we just experienced here in the DC region, what are the most common failure points you see in jurisdictions that struggle?
Let's hear from Mr. Keller a little.
Oh, that's for me. Okay.
Yes.
Hey,
Yeah.
Thank you.
greetings, everyone from Chicago, Illinois. We are having a heat wave here. It is 41 degrees.
Here
So,
too.
so we're feeling good about
That's
that.
good for Chicago.
One of the things I wanted to just roll back on it and come up to that is when I work with the MCOG out of DC, is the municipal pacts between municipalities. So one of the things that the key things to do, particularly when we find that the federal government's not responding, is to do a resource and gap analysis of our surrounding local communities to see who has what and who can be called to task in a staging era prior to a weather event because we know it's coming. And so one of the key things to that, one of the things that I set up years ago when I was running the homeless emergency shelters for Chicago. We had shelters, but they would put people out, in the daytime. And so we were having cold weather deaths, in sub-zero temperatures. So warming centers, establishing warming centers, because sometimes, particularly our elderly citizens, don't have their heat goes out and they don't have places to go to, particularly if they don't have any relatives in the area. So the ones that suffer the greatest are our disabled communities and our seniors, because of just the fact that they may be living alone, or they might have a disability where they cannot be able to function just like at 100% like everyone else. So we have to first think about them, just like go all the way back to Katrina when they couldn't get the people out of the nursing homes. So the collaborative agreements between local communities is essential. Now, we won't do that too much in Chicago unless we have, some major things like the NATO summit. When we actually galvanized all the local fire departments and local public safety teams in our collar communities. And so that's kind of essential in order to do a gap analysis and find out where those resources are. In terms of a cold weather event, the first thing you think about is heat, because people can die from the cold. And so that's a primary concern. The next one is movement through the streets, because folk are trying to get to work, particularly essential personnel. They have to get to work. And sometimes they don't have a way to get to work. In Chicago, when I was doing running the CERT program for the Chicago Police Department, I was essential personnel. So fire trucks had to come pick me up off the corner to get me to my location. So that plan that you talk about deals with looking at what are the first key critical things that people need. First is mobility out of, for the snow, the heat resources that need to be available. Those crews with Commonwealth Edison is up here. So it's not just sometimes the public resources, but also it's a public-private partnership that needs to be existing at the same time. So nothing is done. We don't live in a vacuum. And so these partnerships need to be worked out, ahead of time. I mean, all of you know that in any type of emergency, we don't hand out business cards at the emergency. We need to know and establish those relationships beforehand. So those are just a couple of key things. I see a hand up, Derek. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's a
that's
question.
Levon had a question. I wanted to
No,
bring
that's
her in.
me.
That was Derek.
Oh,
That's
okay.
me.
I'm sorry. I had to
No,
acknowledge
my
her as well.
hand was
Okay,
up,
Derek, I'll
but
bring
I
you up.
took it down.
Okay,
Did you
Derek.
want to go first, Levon?
No,
Can I
no, go ahead.
please?
Oh,
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm wondering if either of you have seen the memo that went out from the DPWT indicating that they were having some staffing and resource challenges coming into the winter season. My understanding is that October was the time that the agency was supposed to submit its plan to its appropriate DCAO, and that was not done. So if you have any insight, if you've seen that, then let us know what you think of it. And then my part two of the question has to do with, you just mentioned, sir, about public-private. I was over on Hall Road in Bowie off Central Avenue. It runs kind of parallel to Central Avenue. And it was barely 2 lanes wide. And as Mr. Dozier said earlier, the lanes were not close to being even to the yellow lines. And I almost got hit. And that's a metro route. And so 2 parts, the DPWT crisis or challenge, and then Metro, because I can remember when Metro used to alter its routes, but they actually had a bus coming through there yesterday. And so if you can address Metro. Thank you.
I'll go right there. The bottom line is funding. And when funding is reduced, everything. So I have not seen the memo. I've seen a lot about the county public works. But the problem is just that all across sectors, whether it's policing, fire, funding affects hiring and the ability when we look at hospitals and all the things that Charles and Reverend Keller have already talked about. But here in the county, it really does come down to funding. The less money that comes from FEMA to the state and the state down to the counties, this is why we see that. So again, if we can't hire the appropriate amount of people to do the basic response, like you said, what happens when something is unprecedented? And I'm only using the word again because we had already touched on it. So here we had this weeks, but we knew in October that we weren't going to be ready for the winter season. We knew we didn't have the sand. We knew our trucks are aging. We knew, I mean, on and on and on. Even in the community that I live in Upper Marlboro, we've had to change trash removal contractors because Bowie Trash Company couldn't hire enough people to get the neighborhood done in a timely basis. So if a private entity like Bowie Trash can hire enough people, we shouldn't be shocked, especially when we saw at the beginning of 25 all the layoffs of the federal government, right? So if all those people are suddenly out of work, funding, even the tax base, think about how much tax money, tax revenue Prince George's County lost in the first year of this administration. That's staggering. And so that's why we're in the situation that we're in. And then so that's why it comes full circle. Again, both Reverend Keller and Charles are talking about where we should be and the things that should be in place to get us there. We're not there. And so knowing what we know in the last 2 weeks, so after COVID and learning all the things we did during the pandemic, my take is it can only get worse when you have people who ignore the rule of law or ignore standards or ignore norms, right? So it is a bigger picture of looking and saying, I mean, I think America is just cyclical like this, right? So again, the county, if we look at how the county has been governed over the years, has it gotten better? Or I mean, I've only been here for 20 some odd years and probably look at things differently, right? So I would probably say things have gotten worse. And, our leadership was at, the University of Maryland, College Park, in their alternate EOC, I guess is what they wanted to call it. But they had a good time, probably better.
I thought we weren't going to bring that up.
Well,
now why did you go and start me?
Because it's part of the conversation.
They spent our money.
It's part of the conversation.
Right.
They spent our money.
Again, it is definitely, Sherman. I think it's not that's not politics. That's reality. And even I think Keller could say, even in Chicago, right? Like so. I spent the holidays in Michigan, and it snowed all the time. But we were able to move from all through southeastern Michigan without any problems. I mean, literally the first day we couldn't see the city line. The next day it's clear, but the snow is gone.
So before we get too far in this conversation, I definitely want to bring it back to what you said, because within our group and in social media, there were a litany of comments talking about, the EOC situation. And, I had been explaining to others that I too am an emergency manager, that I am degree certified, trained, I have my ICS 3 and 400 as well. And so I do have a bit of knowledge, even though I haven't been in the field for quite some time, that creating a secondary leadership silo or site that operates in the silo actually harms or hinders the responses to the recovery efforts, for the simple fact that leadership has a place in the emergency operations center where someone can, come up and say, hey, we need to get this approved, and not create a communications gap as well. So since you brought it up, would you mind talking about it? About how
I don't know any of the county leadership personally. I know of them, based on, working with Prince George's County and the Urban Area Security Initiative that was part of the Department of Homeland Security. Was it a good move? Obviously not. Was it a good look? Absolutely not. But again, I don't think it's I get that, your group is about accountability, but I think accountability needs to roll back here for citizens, for, governance and accountability. We need to start governing ourselves to be prepared when government doesn't do what it's supposed to do. This isn't a new conversation, right? We learned after 1 million American citizens died from a pandemic that wasn't worse than a cold. Remember that. It wasn't Ebola. It wasn't the swine flu. It wasn't the measles. It was a respiratory disease that could have been treated if it was managed correctly. So here we could spend time talking about an alternate EOC, but to me, Sherman, I think what we need to do is take this mantra that you have as your organization and get people to understand that as free citizens, we get to govern ourselves, right? And we get to take the knowledge of our communities and make it better, right? That's the point of, I think, forums like this and the ability to have diverse thinking. Like you said, you may not be in the field, but you have a frame of reference of what it takes to open tomorrow. And remember, the only job that I have each day is to ensure that my clients can continue making money and that the government can operate. Remember, if we can't print money, if we can't do tax refunds, if we can't deploy our military, if we can't move Amtrak, our country stops and dies. Mm-hmm. So that is the same for all of us. If we can't get to dialysis, if we can't heat our homes, all these things are super important, just like what Reverend Keller was saying about getting picked up by a fire truck. That's amazing. I'm sure that if that hit the news, they would have said that was fraud, waste, and abuse, right, Reverend? So again, like, I mean, we just have to understand what it is that we're doing and what we need to really, I think all of us could say on this call that we look at the news today and we just shake our head, right? It's mind-blowing, the ignorance and the hate and just the foolishness that happens every day out of this nation's capital. But it doesn't stop our need to get out of our driveway. It doesn't stop our need to be able to go to Costco and get what it is to sustain our lives. So that's where we need to be. And that's why folks like us exist, to understand and then arm folks to hold elected officials accountable, to show that 1 million people died under this man's watch, or our streets didn't get plowed, and Ms. Thomas almost crashed
2 weeks.
Right.
And,
so
and one
that's
thing, Mark,
super important. Go ahead.
One thing, Mark, and knowing the EOC, Prince George's County, I worked at Prince George's Hospital while I was in college. I know the Emergency Operations Center used to be on 450 right there at the fire department. Then it moved to Kettering. Am I correct? And then it moved over to off of Central Avenue, where it's housed now. And a lot of jurisdictions politicize emergency management. And when we talk about the whole community, that private sector has to be involved. And I stress to our members, if the funding, you also have to tap all funding resources available. Those organizations, private sector, Walmart, Home Depot, Target, they have foundations. They're part of the whole community. They have to contribute in good times and bad. And those bad times, hey, you have resources. You have the resources. You have deep pockets. You made money. It has to be put back into the community so that we can recover. I was the deputy chair of the Global Health Security Agenda Consortium when COVID hit. And I was amazed at what was going on. It's like, wait a minute. They're politicizing this. They made it political. And as of now, that current White House administration, they pulled out of the World Health Organization. They pulled out of the UN. Even those organizations are in dismay right now. It's a lot of confusion. But locally, all disasters are local. Take care of your neighbor. Take care of yourself, your family, and your closest neighbors, because we can survive this. When government comes to us, they have their priorities. We give them. We still have the power of the vote. If our elected officials aren't doing it, you got to go. You got to go.
And
hold them
Levon
accountable.
had a question about transportation. She wanted to know what was it, Levon, if the buses had changed, if the bus changed?
You
I wanted to know what the if Metro, in light of the fiscal challenges that you all are mentioning, if they had plans to shut down routes or not, or what's that conversation look like? I've been a part of emergency response team, but not in the public transportation sense. And I just was surprised that that back road was still getting bus service when there was nowhere for people to stand. I watched 2 people stand in the driveway so they could wait for the bus. So just interested in the whole metro. And I know transportation is a big deal in Prince George's County. So whatever you can add to that. Thank you.
And actually, before we, because I think Derek has a transportation question too, so we can get all those questions out since our time
Well,
is.
it's really not. My question is for Reverend Keller. Reverend Keller, I want to get to the meat and potatoes of what happened in this county 2 weeks ago. I'm a former director of transportation, and I've worked in transportation for 36 years. So I know about emergency preparedness during a snow and inclement weather from the transportation standpoint. And being not like Chicago or Detroit, Michigan, what I want to ask you, and I hope some of our county officials are listening, what type of equipment, because we don't have the proper equipment to move what happened 2 weeks ago. And I know that from experience. I heard Mr. Dozier talk about the beet juice. That's new to me. We used to use something called bluestone. It's this salt that helps to melt the snow. But in a place like Chicago that gets the type of snow that you guys get, and it's just every day for you guys. What type of equipment in this county, trucks, snow plows, whatever, would you suggest that we need to move snow like this? Because that was one of the issues. We just couldn't move it.
Yeah, you
Well,
know,
that was certainly a question I was going to ask you as well. And since we did ask it, I'll just go ahead. And they threw a whole lot of questions at you. I do apologize.
so
They
good.
acting
Don't
like they don't
bother.
have manners tonight.
It's good. It's
But
good.
It's not out of
as it
manners.
pertains to that, um, all equipment doesn't have to be purchased, and I'll just let you go from there.
So interesting. My expertise is along the line of public safety, but as you probably know, Sherman, seeing how you've had ICS 300, and I'm an instructor and a trainer for that, that incident action plan is absolutely necessary for an event such as this that deals with all aspects of government, from public works and public utilities to even government finance, because people got to come in and cut the checks to get paid. But let me just cut to the chase. In Chicago, we use our streets and sanitation vehicles to do clean the streets. The same garbage trucks that pick up the garbage get mounted, have mounts for snow plows. We just snow plows. Now we have we have trucks that do that, but we also take our streets and sand vehicles and mount plows on them. It reminds me of an old movie I saw, the Battle of Midway, and how the Japanese lost the Battle of Midway because they were loading their planes up with torpedoes, with land bombs to hit Midway when, the aircraft came and they needed to have torpedoes. So we need to be able to shift. You need to have a multi-purpose vehicle and begin to mount, how can I say, transform that equipment almost like you see in the movie Transformers, so that you can use some of your existing equipment, and then when the winter time comes, you have a warehouse or the grounds where they come in and they get fitted for this, and then they go back out, and the garbage can wait for maybe 2 or 3 days. Or it's got to get working. So we mount our streets and sand vehicles with plowing capabilities, as well as those snow plows that we have. The interesting part here is that, even in Chicago, sometimes we're not ready because our highways, our expressways, like I-94 and I-90 and 294 are all managed. They run through the city, but they're managed by the state. And so therefore, there's where that partnership comes into play. And sometimes they talk to one another, and sometimes they don't. But when we get a big event like the one that you guys are experiencing out there, they're usually, mapping that out way ahead of time. So that's one thing, is to mount your existing vehicles with the equipment and transform them into to snow plows. The other piece, to piggyback on what Mark was saying, one of the things that I'm going to be doing in the next coming weeks at a conference called the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference is beginning to we know that our government resources aren't what they should be, but just like fire hydrants, what do you find within every square mile? Well, in our urban
A
areas, every
drain.
square mile, what do you find?
A drain.
Say again?
It's a drain.
Yep, you find drains, and then next to those drains are houses of worship. You got temples, mosques, synagogues, and churches. And so my impetus is to begin to equip these houses of worship with the skill sets of a program called CERT. I'm sure all of you all are familiar with that. That enables them to go out, and I train the churches in community emergency response as a team, so they can go out and train their and assist their neighbors in whatever the disaster might be, kind of an all hazards approach.
Mhm.
It takes a while for that to catch on, because what I normally see in communities of color and disadvantaged communities is that we're always we're always reactionary and not proactive. And so our capability for resilience is waning because we haven't done some things in front of a disaster or in front of an emergency, so that
Mhm.
once it hits, it's the tail wagging the dog kind of piece. So
Yeah.
I'm just working with churches
So
and
we
counties.
actually do have a CERT here in Prince George's County. It started in Laurel, the city of Laurel.
Mhm.
I believe someone on the call did have an update about it that go ahead, Charles.
Can I just add something to what Richard said and what he said in the beginning? And Derek, I'm glad you mentioned you retired from transportation. And it's a matter of who has taken over since you left. Do
Now, I
they
didn't
know?
retire, but we're
And
talking to
one of
that
the
later.
other things I wanted to add, not to cut you off about EOC, is I used to train and design emergency operations center. Really, the flow that went in the room. You had to be trained to be in that room. And Richard earlier mentioned resources. That's one of the things that would be on one board. What are the resources that we have within our area and locally? What do they have? And can we get it? That was an important feature that we all looked at. Hey, what are the local resources? And in every EOC, major cities, you also have to look at, in Prince George's County, military support the civilian authorities. If it's an Air Force base, it has a runway, and that runway equipment can be utilized if it does not affect the mission of that base. The equipment is there. This is where you have to get into those agreements early, before it happens, long before it happens. But that is a DOD mandate. Military support the civilian authorities, 72 hours, they can give you the equipment you need. Not only for snow, but even for floods. Those military members will come out and assist. That's every military base. But for snow, that equipment, who has the heaviest equipment nearby? The airports, they have it. Can you utilize that when their mission is fulfilled? If it doesn't interrupt them, it's a yes or no question. They're going to have that on their list. Hey, go plow this road over here, but come back to the base. These are some of the things you got to think outside the box. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you so much. And so I
Well,
do have an additional
Sherman,
question.
but before you go, I was going to ask Richard if he could answer the question about the metro doing different, that part.
Well,
If he
now,
can.
no, I can't. So I
I
can
can
just,
Yeah.
answer that, Tony.
because
They don't work with them. How would they?
yeah, because
No, I'm talking about how it's done in Chicago.
oh, in
Oh,
Chicago. Oh yeah, well,
Well,
that's pretty easy. The CTA, Chicago Transit Authority, and the Regional Transit Authority work in tandem for the major routes. They take care of the major routes first. Like what's a major route in DC? Georgia Avenue. You take it takes some of your
Martin Luther
mix.
King,
Say again?
that one bus route that goes from Chevy Chase to really it goes to Southern Avenue. There's one bus route that used to do all of that. I just wanted to bring that up. Yeah.
And so what they do, if they find that it's going to be a snow event where they're almost maybe getting like an inch an hour, they focus on the major arteries. That's the first thing in terms of the bus routes. In terms of the train routes, they work with what is that? I'm trying to remember. We don't call it. Ours is called Metro up here. So they work with RTA and make sure that those switches, because the switches can freeze up. When those switches freeze up, stuff trains just stop. And so they try to keep the tracks clear from snow, and they actually they may just keep a train running just to keep that track hot. Not as frequently, because trains sometimes don't run at nighttime. They'll run a train at the nighttime just to keep that track clear and know what those problem areas are going to come up. So they kind of sit down and they map some of that out. But that's probably all I can comment on that, because I'm not in the room for the transportation people.
Right. Right. And I'm going to throw a few more questions you guys' way. So quick answers would definitely be appreciated to keep this moving, because I see the team has a lot of questions they want to ask as well. So let's discuss individual versus government responsibility. Where does personal preparedness end and government responsibility begin, especially for vulnerable populations like seniors and people living with disabilities?
I'd say,
Oh, go ahead, Charles.
oh, go ahead, Mark. Please go ahead.
No, just quickly again, I think it's dependent upon where they live. I think residential neighborhoods should be responsible for those things, right? When we talk about power outages, the ability to get medications, transportation, all that stuff, none of this is rocket science, right? The ability to be prepared for what we know happens. There's really nothing new as far as most likely scenarios. So when we talk about that, Sherman, I think it's really important. What does someone 50 plus need to survive in inclement weather, an improvised nuclear attack, a chemical attack, a biological attack, those kind of things, right? Say it's just simply like the salad bar was poisoned, so they couldn't go vote. What do we need to respond and recover from that? So when you talk about where personal responsibility, ends and government, that's blurred right now, unfortunately, because we don't live in that world anymore. All these things that we have spoken about are what should be and not what are. And so therefore we have to get back to very simply, what does it take to be able to get up tomorrow and function? That's the mindset that we have to have.
Yeah. And if someone could only do three things to prepare, what should they be?
Food, shelter, and access to funds to move to somewhere safer.
I would add water onto that.
Well, that's part of
water.
food, Reverend. I would say. I mean,
Yeah, it's part of the food place, because sometimes you end up with contaminated water as a result. I mean, we've even had boiling orders come out for some of our suburban communities just because water mains have broken. When the water main breaks, now you got all types of contamination, and they're waiting for bottled water, et cetera, to get in, and that doesn't happen. So everybody should have food, water, shelter, and as Mark said, money, not your credit card, because if the electricity's down, that credit card is just a piece of plastic. So we used to say that people need to have $300 on hand. Well, that's only going to get you so many McDonald's these days. So,
no business at McDonald's.
Yeah. So there are a lot of entities out here that when I was in DC not too long ago for a CERT conference, there are various industries that have, as some of you might have been prior military, we used to call them, They call them MREs, meals ready
Yeah,
to
that's
eat.
believable.
And sometimes, and even before then, we call them something else. That was,
Well, there's some a different kind on Amazon now, so I did
yeah.
look that up at one point. So, hopefully it's gotten better. What's the most dangerous part of a disaster that people don't realize is killing them?
Hmm.
Oh, wow.
Again, I think it depends on what you're talking about. I mean, if we talk about something that's likely like weather or an active assailant, right? One of the things that we teach with active assailant is play dead. Um, we'll get just, you said quick answers. So one of the things I
Hmm.
try to tell people about active assailants is that even though this society glorifies violence, what we have found with actual shooters is that killing is not easy and killing is not fun, right? So if you can play dead, if you can act like, he already got you or she already got you, your chances of survival raise a lot more. Running is not an issue, is not an option, right? I tell people all the time, we can show over and over again that if you try to run from an active assailant, you're going to get shot. Weather, same thing. I mean, going out before it's too soon, improvised nuclear device. You don't want to go into where there's radiation, chemical attack. I mean, all of these things we could talk, but it is absolutely situational awareness, understanding what has actually happened and what could still happen, like earthquakes, right? Everybody, DC, when we had the earthquake years ago, everybody was grabbing onto door frames. No, don't do that, right? So those are the things that people have to understand. And if people spent more time really listening and understanding what the hazards were and what the threats were, but most people say, oh, it will never happen. But I promise you, that every time I've talked to a client that says, oh, we can't afford you, then they get shot up the next week. Promise.
And you brought up a really good thing, and I want to bring this up because a lot of people don't know that Prince George's County has priority level one resources in its backyard, not and tons of critical resources. So to think that something could never happen, here, I'm talking about anti-terrorism, it would be a huge mistake and a disservice to our community, and the public should know that. Andrews is right down the street from me.
And like you said, the interesting thing is, yes. So and then HMX, which is the Marines helicopter squadron for the president, is right on 295. So there are a lot of rich targets, but like you said, in Prince George's County primarily, and Charles can speak to Andrews better than anyone, but the number of VIPs that fly in and out, I shouldn't even say VIPs, but American dignitaries, foreign dignitaries. That's the home of every head of state that flies into the country. They land at Andrews. Is that correct, Charles?
Yes, you're right.
So
And
you're absolutely right. It is ripe for an improvised nuclear device, sir, and which would take out half the county.
Mhm.
and
Okay,
they do with Prince George's County, part of the civil engineering group there on this support are agreements with local authorities. And Prince George's County, if the roads aren't clear, how are their personnel going to get on base? Really,
all right.
And
that
so
has
again,
always been an issue.
right. So again, Charles talks about things that should be, but for a long time, we did have a domestic nuclear detection office that had a plan this big on how to respond to a nuclear. But what I tried to remind the FBI and all these responders that were very excited is who has time to go to the office to get that plan while they're responding to the detonation. So we have to understand that, yes, but if an improvised nuclear device, yeah, there might be a plan in somebody's office, but no one has time to get it. So we've got to understand what the threat is long before. Like
Right.
everybody on this call understands diabetes, right? We, as kids, it
Mhm.
was the sugar, whatever it is. But we've heard it
Right.
all our lives. But do we really know how to treat it? Do we really know how to get in front of it? This is the same thing in preparedness, right? Understanding the science of the outcomes, right? You can lose your limb if you don't control your sugar. You can go blind. Same thing. The roads are closed because an improvised nuclear device went off. Snowplows can't get through. Whatever the case is, we can get in front of it. It's the same thing. We don't have to complicate response. It's not rocket science. And I appreciate, Sherman, that you have a degree. That's great. I'm glad that they've professionalized the industry, but it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
thing. Back away
I have
from
a,
the
Hey,
table,
Mark,
put your foot
and
down.
one thing I wanted to add, and Sherman, education, even at the K-12 level, in awareness in emergency management and understanding, even about shelter, water, and food. Mark and I participated. You remember this, Mark? KIPP Academy, Real Men Read. I had preschool kids, and I was teaching them the history, reading a story, the history of water. They understood it. It's the same water from precision period. It's just recycled. They understood that process. That even though the snow and ice, it's recycling itself, and the importance of water in different forms. So that awareness education, which is free through FEMA for everyone in the United States that has a social security number, can get a student ID and take these free courses, the independent study courses. It doesn't ask age. It just asks, do you have a student ID? Don't ask age. And as I mentioned, and what we've been emphasizing since BEMA started, you can get a 2-year degree out of attending these FEMA courses by taking those college education units and converting them over to those college credits, and get a 2-year degree. There's certain universities and colleges that will accept that. And you can get a 2-year degree free. You probably have to pay to have it converted to college credits, but that's just the thing about that, But I just wanted to mention that education and training can start at the K-12 level.
I have a question, because I wanted to see if we can sum some of this up relative to what we just experienced here in Prince George's County. So listening to what you all have shared, one part of preparedness, based on what we just went through, our threat with the snow. Sounds like there should have been inter-county or some type of agreements with other counties, maybe with the state and other jurisdictions, as to how they could help us deal, knowing that we had these shortages. So it sounds like that was one thing that should have been done. Two, our major roads should have been focused on for plowing, to make sure there's access out. Three, we do have trash trucks, but that could have been something we could have leveraged to help plow. And that didn't happen. It sounds like also our metro, and I'm not sure what happened with our metro, because most of our roads were pretty icy and no one can get around. So I mean, it sounds like and it sounds like with everything that we went through, and I'm not putting nobody on the spot, but how would you grade our preparedness from our local government as to the notice that was given? Because we talked about this snow and this ice coming for at least a week.
Yes, days.
And yeah, and so based on not having all these things in place, Levon brought up about the memo from September or October, knowing that we were short-staffed. So with all of this stuff being known, how well prepared would you say we were in Prince George's County?
Can I use an inspector general rating that we would use?
Sure.
And we went by colors: green, yellow, red. Red.
Absolutely.
So, and what does red?
One of the things,
Bad.
means, I wouldn't say, in other words, with red, I would give exactly what were the deficiencies. But one thing to remember about all of this happened on a Sunday morning. Imagine if it had happened during a normal workday at 12 noon.
Well, it was a normal work day for some folks. So,
Yes, but a Sunday morning for the majority of let's say the people that travel on 495 commuting to work. Imagine that. And you have employers, even private sector, saying no more telecommuting.
Yes,
Wait a minute.
exactly.
And
Bet they
we know
regretted that.
past history, if it snowed during a normal business day, a Wednesday, at 12 noon, the major thoroughfares, the major roads would be backed up and cars would be abandoned. And someone would have to make that call to say, in that office you work in, and personally, you have to say, I am not going to put myself in jeopardy. My kids have a plan.
Mhm.
The daycare, someone is going to get them. Someone is going to pick up their pet. Even we had emphasized pets should have emergency plans. I'm going to stay where I'm going to shelter in place until this passes. Just wait it out. But that's one thing to say, one thing to think of. I would rate it red.
Yeah, and Miss Wingfield, I definitely an F. I mean, a week's worth of notice is a godsend, and so that's plenty of time to pick up and call Michigan, call Ohio, Indiana, places that do this for a living. So absolutely ridiculous. But I think the response is that now we go to our state senators, we go to the county, and we explain to them, we understand funding deficiencies. We understand that a lot of this is dependent on tax revenue, so on and so forth. But at the same time, the lawsuits, I always tell people that the lawsuits outweigh the investment. So if you are willing to invest, I mean, my rate is much cheaper than getting sued for not being prepared for an act of assent. And it's the same thing. I mean, the ability to have to suddenly brake because your lane ends because it's covered in snow is foolishness after 2 weeks. And it's still happening all over the county. So there are easy lifts here. I mean, it's again, it's not like this is so unprecedented, right? It may be for our area, correct, but it doesn't mean it hasn't been actually done in other jurisdictions. So that's a phone call. That's free. And so literally you could have brought it just so look at how power companies prepare for hurricanes. They bring in crews from out of state. So you're telling me we can't figure out how to do that? We can't figure out where the
Yeah.
bobcats are that can crack ice and things.
Yeah.
But people, I don't know how many people are familiar with the sanctuary at Kingdom Square right here in Upper Marlboro. The pastor paid $21,000 to have his parking lot cleared for a funeral that was just a few days after the storm. $21,000.
Can
But
I
you know,
just say
another
something
thing
real
that
quick?
one moment, you know, because I want to touch on this before we get to another, but to surge, that's one thing that the governments have not been doing. And I know I talked about whole of government and whole of community at one point as well. And, you know, we said that things have evolved, you know, then, but if our government did not use all of the available resources, because the levy that they're talking about is about the snow plan that was supposed to be set place in October, you know, handed off to the, you know, the powers that be. And they were supposed to start, you know, getting the contractors and training them, supposed to have orientation and things over the course because it's a 12-month operation. That didn't happen. And once the government understood that they didn't have the capacity to do the you know a traditional snow route, you know, let alone the, you know, the Snowcrete combination, they should have surged and they should have used, because 311 there was a lack of communication. A lot of people were calling and were on hold for 4 hours, which is unbelievable. So we need to train the government workers to be able to have dual positions, like, you know, we had at FEMA. Everybody was an emergency manager, you know, and this is where we have to, you know, in addition to what we've already done, incorporate more of our government workers. But again, they have to be able to get there, you know, if with the routes. So that's something that has to be looked at as well.
And that's something we talked about, Sherman, that the Homeland Security presidential directives that were done after 9/11, that, you know, all personnel really had to take certain basic emergency management courses. I'm not going to go into the Homeland, the directive numbers. Mark, you know, you knew this. I know of this. And that also should transport down to local governments. So I'm on the Prince George's County DPW website right now, and I see Prince George's County Virtual Snow Summit 2024. Wait a minute.
Wow.
That page should be updated.
It was updated. They had one in 2025 as well.
Okay.
But I don't
Well,
know
let me
why the page is
tell you what
updated,
I
but
look at, and this was scheduled for December. So they're
Mhm.
planning ahead, but then a lot of people don't take it seriously. And it's like, wait a minute, what if your family is affected? I always think about, I don't want my family affected. I have family members, sisters, brothers, nieces, nephews, daughter, grandkids that live in Prince George's County. They know emergency management.
Yeah.
They call me
Did any of you
and I'll give
all
them the
attend
answer.
the MDERS this past last year, the Maryland Emergency Response Symposium that was on the campus of the University of Maryland?
Mhm.
Charles, you gave me a heads up.
Didn't
And
know.
I flew down for that. And you know, they usually have presentations, somebody's who's written a book or something, but then there are, you know, some breakout sessions where, you know, these kind of discussions occur. So when we get a heads up on that symposium for this year, Charles, you know, I'd probably be on the mailing list that we need to send it out to everybody. I met at that conference, who probably should be on here, is her name was any of you all know Melody? Melody
I
is
am Melanie.
Melody
Yeah.
Mickens. I think she is the deputy director for Prince George's Office of Homeland Security and
Yeah.
Emergency Management.
Melody is squared away. She's great. She's got institutional knowledge, but she's one person.
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she does a fantastic job and understands the limitations of one person. So I'll leave it at that.
Absolutely.
And about money, one thing that I've even approached FEMA about, in terms of FEMA has what's called a disaster resiliency fund. All grants and mitigation money is in this fund. It's reported to Congress every month, the status of this fund. All monies go through this fund. My question, even to FEMA, the administrator, before the current administration was there, why is it that, well, there are over 3,500 counties in the states and territories of the U.S. Why isn't there a fund that people can contribute to, not for loans, but even tax deductions in each one of those counties? Maryland has a disaster resiliency recovery fund. Yes, Governor Moore has pushed that. And when the bridge collapsed, I noticed they offered grants before they offered loans. That made that because that bridge collapse was important. And these are some of the things I talk to communities about. The money is in our community. It's there. We have to trust who we're giving it to. It's there.
Jeremy.
Derek, you had a question?
Yeah, now, I want to backtrack because I think this is very important. Levon asked about metro and the buses and the routes and things of that nature. I can answer that question. Even for Chicago, these transportation systems in inclement weather like this are supposed to have supervisors, street supervisors, and one of their responsibilities is to be on the streets when they get these inclement weather calls. I mean, it might be hours before the snow starts, and it's actually when the snow is on the street. I know that we have that in Prince George's County schools, and I know that we have that in Prince George's County, the bus, our transit system here in Prince George's County, because I ran both of them. And what I'm trying to say is that these individuals should be on the streets making assessments about the streets while the inclement weather is going on and disseminating that information back to the heads of their departments so they can get that information back to the news media and to the community as to how we should be moving in vehicles, period. If that doesn't happen, which that did not happen well this time, and I know
At
that for
all.
a fact,
Yeah,
that
it
is
happened.
why they were making calls for people to go to school last Monday, and then they got up Monday morning at 5:30 in the morning and called everything off and told everybody, no, we're not
I
going to
think that
school.
was Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
That occurred because the supervisors who are mandated in their job description to be out on the streets, looking at the streets and looking at the schoolhouses, and on the county side, the supervisors who ride in their trucks looking at the streets for the transit buses, it didn't happen well. It didn't happen at all for the school system. I can't speak for the transit system, but from what I saw, it didn't happen. And you put your employees and your community that rides your vehicles, you put all of them in in
Jeopardy.
harm's way because nobody went and surveyed the streets. So, Levon, I hope that helps your question. And Metro in DC, and I promise you, Meta in Chicago, and any major system that has a transit bus system, train system, or something, somebody is out there at a supervisory level looking at the thoroughfares, assessing whether they're safe to do business that day.
Well, I think they dropped the ball on
I do too.
Hall Road.
It ain't no
Well,
thing. They did.
well, I was going to say because all the roads were frozen. They
It's not
there
even
was
about it being frozen. It's about the fact that they let the bus go through there. The lane, there was lane clearing, right?
Mhm.
It just wasn't properly done. If I almost got hit because a car was oncoming and the lane switched, right? They had a yellow line they were driving
Oh.
by, and then the yellow line disappeared. Imagine a bus coming through there having to maneuver. You're actually coming into oncoming traffic.
But
So
they couldn't change the routes though because
No,
our roads were so bad.
they
There
could
was there was
they
no
could
way
have
to really change anything. Our
but
roads were so
Tanya,
bad.
hence what Levon is saying.
No, I
Yeah.
hear what she's
No,
saying.
no. I'm not saying you're not. No, let me get this out. What I hear what Levon is saying, and what I'm saying is that if you're going to put your buses or your vehicles out on the street, these supervisors are the one who should have written down Hall Road and seen that and reported that back to
Mhm.
the heads of the department. T, that's what I'm saying. I wasn't trying to cut you off. I just wanted to get that statement out so there's clarity on her
No,
question.
and I agree with what you're saying.
Right,
But again, I guess in our cases, we don't even know because it got to where our government just stopped responding.
right.
They just stopped giving out information. And if it weren't for people hitting Facebook and embarrassing some folks, things probably would have never gotten done.
And it's not taken up
Yeah.
for them at all, but we don't get hit like this. And that's what they had in front of them was a tumultuous task without the equipment to do it with. Now, I don't know
Yeah,
about
but I
their
think
staff.
our guest just made it clear. There are things that
Yeah,
could have been done. That's why they got the
absolutely.
red. There were
And that's
things
why
that could
you
have been done
do.
that were not done.
The other
Absolutely.
thing is,
Yeah.
we had when I was at HRC working for the military, I was over top of the disaster recovery group, and one of the things we did is practice unusual, out of character events that could happen, and clearly, if you prepare for something, you may not get it right that first time, but you at least had some idea what you're supposed to do. And it
Right.
made no sense whatsoever that the cars were coming both ways and only one lane was clear.
Right.
Because Sandy
Yeah.
almost got hit going out, and we have flag light. They don't even think about us. They don't come up here. But they had where the street begins to come on the flag lots, they had one lane clear, and that's a two-way street.
Mhm.
And she said it just so happened she looked up and the cars were coming this way.
but I
So I
think
know what
Okay.
LaVon is saying in terms of
Right.
they cleared one lane when it's a two-lane, two-way street. And those things should be documented, and we should be debriefing right now. Somebody should be giving us debriefs.
Yeah, thank
local
you, and
government.
thank you all for that
Montgomery
statement. But
County. Yeah.
yeah, right. And I want to go ahead and move the conversation forward, because we've dwelled on that for a little bit, and let's talk about some other thing that is going to be a possibility in the near coming future. We're hearing increased concerns about potential power outages across Maryland, rolling power outages. How should emergency preparedness evolve when outages themselves become a recurring threat?
Well, now it does go back to what Charles and Reverend Keller have been speaking about. This is where PEPCO and BGE and Southern Maryland, SMECO, I think it's called, should be working with the counties. I think BGE, PEPCO, and SMECO all work in Prince George's County. So this is when the emergency management teams, emergency responders should be working directly with them. This is not rocket science.
That's
This
right.
is a
Right.
support function. This is nothing that we have spoken about tonight is
Exactly.
insurmountable, right? So literally, when we're on Facebook and when we're on Nextdoor, we should be encouraging our neighbors to encourage council members to bring these people. We all know some neighbor that has a degree of separation to this infrastructure, and so there's no reason that folks shouldn't be demanding that. After what we've seen with our own eyes, that we need to do better, and that this is how we do it. So if these power outages are coming, I mean, BGE has already sent out notices about being able to automatically cycle back electricity use, right? So
Yeah.
again,
But
uh,
what does a community do though? Because this conversation is also centered around what, to do when help doesn't come. So
Okay.
government
Can I
isn't
get that
coming to
first?
save us. What do we
please,
do?
Charles, go ahead. Yeah.
Mhm.
Attend those meetings, those public hearings, voice your concerns. This was an issue years ago in DC in Ward 8. Ward 8
Mhm.
would be without power for over a week. I would sit in those meetings and raise my hand. Hey, this is a problem. This should not be occurring, period. And getting the community involved and staying engaged, talking to the elected officials about the council person. Because usually in DC, the way it's structured, a representative from that particular ward is in the EOC. So if something like that happens, the EOC is activated. Why? A community is in a crisis. We have to resolve this crisis. Who's at the table? PEPCO.
So
We
I
have a
think,
problem.
Sherman, you were asking for specifics, I presume, correct? Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think it
Oh,
depends on the
sorry.
time. I think it depends on
no
the time
problem.
of
That
year.
matters as well.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think it depends on the time of year. As we're going into spring and summer, and that was going to happen, then I think you talk about cooling centers. I think you talk about shuttle buses to get people, the most vulnerable to these centers. I think you get people to understand where ice is going to be distributed so they can put it in coolers. I think that you begin to talk about the symptoms of heat stroke and what happens, and like Reverend Keller said, begin to stock up on water. I mean, we were supposed to be drinking a gallon of water a day anyway. Most of us probably don't take in that much, but how do we get the appropriate amount of water? And again, the flip side of that, if it was cold weather, how do we get blankets, ensure what it's like when your house is at 50 degrees, so on and so forth. All these things that, how do you eat when there's no electricity? How do you communicate? Does your landline work? Obviously, since we can't charge phones. So
Landline.
again, yeah, I know that's
I've got mine.
right.
Me too.
So again,
I
it's
don't never
what you're
answer it, but
right. And so like we have in the neighborhood that I live in, Upper Marlboro, we have a community center. So that could be used. That if the generator is there, then the most vulnerable of the neighborhood could be shuttled there. First Baptist Church of Glenarden is right around the corner. I promise you they have generators. And so,
Mhm.
they should be, and this is what Reverend Keller was talking about the faith-based community. They can sit 3,000 people in that sanctuary. So you're telling me they can't turn on the air conditioning, or with a generator? I mean, this is not rocket science. The
Right.
answers are right in front of us. We just have to work together and not get it's not my responsibility. It is absolutely our responsibility as Prince Georgians.
Yeah, I had mentioned within our group that our faith-based community had been a little quiet, specifically our church folk, because I follow a lot of pastors. And I didn't see them, shouting out. Maybe they have an internal conversation for their membership and they didn't want to be overwhelmed. But I was surprised not to see, postings that said, hey, we went and got Mother Smith out so she could get to her dialysis, or Brother Joe needed to do whatever. And so you're absolutely right. And I guess what we can do is follow up on what's happening with CERT. I do know that at some point during a different administration, we did have the faith-based community involved in emergency preparedness, but can't speak for what's happened in the past 7 years. So,
But was getting out to the main roads. It was
Yeah.
just so difficult getting out to the main roads. Everybody was stuck because we didn't have the main roads taken, the main highways and roads taken care of. We didn't, I mean, emergency, a gentleman that we um, work with our organization, he had an emergency. Ambulance couldn't get through there. He was on the news. The ambulance had to call the plow trucks to come and clear his road. And then we had the house that caught fire. So I think you had a lot of people, individuals prepared in this situation. Our problem was our county government there was such a lapse there. Nobody could get out and get anywhere.
Well, we didn't use CERT during COVID as well, and that's one thing I had noticed. I was like, well, if there was ever a time, but I guess so many people were afraid, because
Yeah,
of
that
the
was
type of,
different.
but even in
No,
different, there are still things that you are supposed to do as a member of CERT. You
members
have to.
of
That's why you have PPE and
The
go
interesting
ahead.
thing
members in
too
other
is
communities in LA, in Boston, that was CERT. They were involved. Even Houston, they were distributing protective gear,
Hmm.
prophylaxis
Yeah, they can
equipment,
do that. Yeah.
masks, doing whatever they can.
Yep.
And it doesn't just end in one particular event. It's an ongoing effort
I
across
would
the board.
let me make a suggestion. I know it's far off. Um, but I also have a home in Laurel, Maryland. And so I'm to your point, Sherman, in terms of some things that are going on out there. I know that there's an EOC close to Laurel, Maryland. I think they have brand new, state-of-the-art EOC
A
somewhere.
$32 million, 46,000 square foot state-of-the-art emergency operations center.
Okay, and so my bone with government is, they always we always say disasters are local, but it's the local people that are the last ones to be consulted when resources are being
Hmm.
coming down from on high.
Hmm.
I'm a strong believer and proponent of bottom up, and I will be out there in June. And Charles, what I think would be a good idea if we can just call it a powwow if you want, because
Mhm.
there's a large community out there, and we can just sit down during the summer months, when it's a good time to buy snow plows and snow blowers because they're real cheap around Memorial Day and those things. But I say that because a lot of places are, when I look at the layout in Maryland and DC, a lot of these cul-de-sacs, and there are these communities, and there are these homeowners associations and things. These are local resources. And they're going to need to dig themselves out sometimes, and maybe we can begin to start that conversation, um, given that we're not speaking Russian by then, that we can begin to have that conversation and all come together, just like Charles indicated, defense coordinating officers. civil military operations officer. I did the same thing we're talking about now for the military for at least 20 years. That's how Charles and I know each other. He was on the Air Force side, I was on the Army side. But I think if we begin to generate that conversation, and Sherman, you're doing an excellent job facilitating this. So I'm just gonna throw the ball down your lane and just put that on the calendar, because it's 4 months out, and we can begin to plan that so that we can really have some conversations with some actionable items. Lessons learned from this. Everybody jot down everything we've talked about today. Then you might have an AI piece, and so that we can not just talk about this, but convene and then talk about some actionable pieces with those entities that we're talking about in the room. If we have to be there to talk to them, we can have a 2-day, 1 day with the community as we talk about stuff, and then bring the government officials and say, here's what we think, and here's how you need to support us, that we, the folk that are here that elected you. This is what we're looking for. Just a thought for future plans, Sherman.
Yeah, that sounds great. We'd love to work with something like that. And keeping the conversation going, I do want to ask, this is for you, Charles, because we spoke about this recently. And I sort of asked it before, but I want to pose it again. What's one thing every household should have that almost nobody does in America?
Oh, yes. Why you put me on the spot? I can't. I'm honestly say.
You mean for an emergency?
Donald, one
What I
moment,
used to
please.
say.
Because you saying, I can tell you like crabs. I could need some. Every house should have crabs, Steve. Every house. So I'm just asking you to clarify. That's all. I'm just saying, my brother.
I used to teach in C. Burney, chemical, nuclear, biological warfare, and a question like that, I would say, "Can you see me at the next break?"
So, do you mind, Charles, if I tell you what I think it is?
Go ahead, Mark.
And I'll chime in after you.
It's a transistor radio. Most people don't have that. That's how you're going to get emergency information when everything else is down. Your satellite radio is not going to work because the satellites are out, but terrestrial radio will always work, and America's emergency system is still on terrestrial radio. So most people probably couldn't find a AM FM radio in their house these days.
Yeah,
so
there's
they should have that.
a crank
I thought you were
radio
going to bring up the ball.
Oh, the
American Red Cross has them.
fire.
They have a crank radio. The National Weather Service puts one out.
Yeah, crank
And-
radio is what we used to say.
And there's one that's solar operated as well, that you can use, and that way you'll get all the broadcasts that are coming out that you probably wouldn't otherwise be able to get. So yeah, National Weather Service radio and a first aid kit. A lot of people don't
Yes.
have first aid kits. I was
Oh,
surprised. I was over someone's house for the Super Bowl Sunday, and they were cutting onions up for their chili and cut themselves, and they didn't even have a Band-Aid in the house.
Oh,
So, first aid kits are pretty good, with stop the bleed things, with people getting shot by federal law enforcement out here. Sometimes when instead of people bleeding out, we need to know how to do it. So first aid kit, and then what Mark said is really good, is that radio. So you can get notifications.
And in any exercise, when I was Inspector General, the 3 areas we always used to really hit were command, control, and communication. That communication paradigm, that is the key to a lot of things, people talking, getting information. And when you look at even first aid and buddy care, kids now are doing CPR. Kids.
Yeah.
And the youth will learn if you show them.
Absolutely.
And even elementary school, you say, where does it start? It starts in the home. Then it goes to school. And they're increasing their knowledge when they go to school. So even our youth can get involved. This FEMA education can be given to the youth. Like I said, you can get a 2-year degree out of this while you're in high school on disaster emergency management. Crisis, The environmental concerns, water, shelter, water, and food, they're not going away. How do you use even emergency management principles in sheltering, temporary sheltering, to address the unhoused? And I'll say this word, they're trying to eliminate the homeless issue. It can be done. It can be done if a community wants it, and you have to get engaged. Those individuals in the community at your local level, go to these meetings, get on these boards, get on these commissions. If just apply, get on these communications commissions. Wow, what is it they usually call it? Even the cable commissions, the energy commissions. Get on these commissions. Find out what's going on in your community and let others know. Because
How much of prepare? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
governments work for us. We put them in there to take care of priority things. But we want to let them know we're watching what you're doing, and we're going to say something. We're going to ask the questions. And I tell people, I can't be everywhere, but it's not about what BEMA does. It's what are you doing at your local level, where you are, not BEMA, where you are, because that's more
So,
important. Bottom up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, you're fine because you actually hit on 2 points. The first I was going to ask a question, then you start asking questions, and that was another question that I was going to ask. So, if you can take this two-part, what's one question residents should start asking their local government? And then also, how much of preparedness is mindset? I mean, not that one. I want to know at what point does an emergency stop being bad luck and start being a planning failure? So the first one is, what's one question that residents should start asking their local government? And the other is, at what point does an emergency stop being bad luck and starts being a planning failure? And either of you all could take either one of those.
I think the first question every resident should ask is, what can we expect from government during a crisis? Absolutely. Because the answer is going to be different. Just like Charles says, 3,500 different counties in America, right? So their answers, we used to say this all the time in Homeland Security. There are 50 different responses to crisis in America because we have 50 states, right? So same thing at the county level, municipal. I mean, even in, when you look at different states, you have county police. Some places don't have county police, county sheriffs, on and on and on and on. So that's the first question: is what, as a resident, what is my expectation of government? What can I expect from you? And if they say, well, like we had here in my neighborhood, that's your HOA. They're supposed to plow the streets, not us.
Right.
So now I understand, right? So now I'm on my HOA. I don't have to call Senator Watson. I'm on my HOA, right? Oh, did I say that out loud? So that's really the first question that you need to ask, right? And can you repeat the second one again?
Sure. At what point does an emergency stop being bad luck and start being a planning failure?
No. So again, I think the adage that Charles and Reverend Keller and I, if you plan to fail, you fail to succeed, right? So it's impossible, right? The best laid plans, right? And what did Mike Tyson say? Everyone plans to get punched until you do.
Right.
So I think it's impossible. I mean, literally, like we've done all kinds of training over the years, and we trained for years, especially with the pandemic, about what do we do with all the bodies, right? And so we talked in exercises about refrigerator trucks, and we've talked about ice rinks, and then people don't understand that kind of planning until you actually have to do it. So I don't know if you remember during COVID that there were refrigerator trucks on New York streets with bodies in them. That is so un-American, right? That's un-American.
Yeah.
But if I say to someone, I'm going to put bodies on an ice rink, they think I'm crazy. So I don't think it's ever a planning failure or bad luck. I think that things can change, and especially our adversary, right? So if I really want to take you out and put you on your knees as America, I'm going to put an improvised nuclear device, and then I'm going to release a biological attack on your next most vulnerable city. You can't plan for that.
Yeah.
That's not bad luck. That's the Satan himself, right? So
Mark,
I don't even think that that's a fair question. I mean, and I know you're not, trying to throw any strays on here, Sherman. I
I
get,
gotcha. Right,
but
right.
I think our mindset has to be one of what is the reality of the world that we live in, right? We cannot, Brave Boy is an attorney. She's not an emergency manager. She hears what her emergency managers say to her, but I don't think it means the same thing, right? And if
He
she was at
assumes she hears it.
right, yeah, let's even go there. I was being
Somebody
nice,
was
right?
not advising her properly.
Well, no,
well,
listen, they literally can
Well,
say,
They could
ma'am,
have advised her.
right?
well,
You
this
even if
may
you
not
look
be a
at,
good listener.
yeah, true.
even when you look at, if you
Listen,
think about the governor of Maryland, what is his life experience? He's ex-military. He understood when
Hmm.
that bridge went out. He understood it. This is impacting X, Y, Z from
Right.
A to Z because this bridge went out. And what are the priorities that government has to do? Because even in the military, the mission, the priorities first. And one of the things we did in the Air Force, we had all hazards plans. We planned for everything, even the shuttle landing on 202, if it had to. We planned. That was something that we did. And I don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
I
When I
just
was in
wanted
the
to add that.
military, I definitely was an on-scene commander, and being in security forces, and when we respond to sea burn and different incidents like
Mhm.
that, and it was certainly on the front of our mind about how you respond, the first things that you have to do and moving forward. But certainly, you know. We when you say we plan for everything, one of our exercises was we were getting shot at by arrows, and who would ever think that someone would come and attack a base with nuclear weapons with arrows? But we plan for it just in case, so while it may not make sense to the general populace, exercise, 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 because something is going to go wrong, but how do you pivot? And you have to have trained your mind in order to make sure that and exercise your mind really in order to think, and as this group say, we have to start removing the box. People like to think outside the box, but let's just remove the box and figure out how do we get it done.
And
And
let
when
me
you
say
think
this
about,
real quick. When
I'm sorry.
we had the earthquake, people in our building, I was away from the school system and I wasn't in Sassa. Our building had no idea what to do when we had that earthquake. None.
Wow. Wow.
None.
That's
It was
amazing.
scary. And that
That,
trickled down to the school system. My daughter said that they went outside and then they were told go back inside. And she said, Mommy, we was running back and forth. She was in kindergarten.
Mm.
and I live about half a mile from where the epicenter was. This is the first one that happened. The epicenter was up in Gaithersburg, in that area. The Emergency Operations Center was about a quarter of a mile from that epicenter in Montgomery County. This is Montgomery County's Emergency Operations Center. And when it happened, I kind of like figured it out. Others I talked to figured it out. That's not something that occurs here. But in LA, oh, they
That's
get them
correct.
all the time. They get them all the time. But the biggest threat there is fire. Even when you look at the power companies, whenever there's maintenance going on any transformer, this is in the whole state of California, they have to report it to a state office so that no fires occur in California. California is doing this. I monitor that system in California. Do they do it here? No, but we did have wildfires at one point here in the Maryland area. They started monitoring it. You see, so it's all based on the community locally. People have to be aware and engaged. Just IC, JIC, just in case.
Mm,
I agree.
like that.
Well, we had fires at the Curry building and nobody knew about
Again, regardless if there was a fire at that building, it was not the emergency operations center. and there is no need for a secondary leadership site that became a silo in order to have a slumber party and do TikToks.
Mhm.
That th- it just goes against all
When,
emergency management principles out there. So
when I
again,
can't go home.
this group is so petty. Does anybody have any questions before we let these esteemed gentlemen go?
No, but we
Yeah,
thank
we
you
want to
so much.
thank you. Very informative.
Appreciate you, brothers.
Appreciate you all so much. Tonight's
Thank you,
conversation
sir.
makes one thing clear that preparedness is not about perfection. It's about honesty, planning, training, and the willingness to adapt before the next crisis hits. Emergency does not wait for election cycles, budget seasons, or press releases. They test systems as they are, not as they are described on paper. Thank you, guys, so much for coming on. We truly
I
appreciate you all.
Thank you
can I
And if
so
just
there's
say
anything
much.
that
something,
you all
sir?
want to say, yes, go ahead, before,
And one of the things, I can't speak for Mark or other members, but whenever you need me, like I mentioned,
Mhm,
all you have to do is call. If you want to talk about this every time you have this session with your group, because these crises are not decreasing in
mhm,
all communities. Climate change is real. It is real. And that means the community has to be aware to adapt to this, but they have to know what is the process when a crisis occurs. You mentioned it. You were the incident commander at one point. A
mhm,
small incident, but you knew what was going on. And Mark talked about, improvised explosive devices. These are all things that when I was in the military, we always sat in our room and simulate and run exercises on this.
mhm,
And how would we counter it for terrorist activity, local and domestic terrorists also, not just international, even governments? So I retired from the military, but every time Mark was bringing up improvised explosive devices and things start popping in my head. And I'm like, okay, all right, we got to do this, and this. Oh, and they're doing improvised explosive device. If you see blue smoke and you're going down K Street Northwest, and it's coming towards you, you better run in the opposite direction. Or if you're in it, you better jump in the local fountain. Decontaminate yourself. Those are the type of things. What goes on? The detection network for DC, the detection network that extends to Prince George's County. What goes on? What are the most vital resources, government resources, assets in Prince George's County? Those that live in the community near it may be affected. And I mentioned, and I'm going to say this, and Mark, you can clarify, and I wish one of our other members were on the line. There is a high school that teaches emergency management. That's part of their curriculum. Something that
nice.
we've been pushing. New York City pushed it after the hurricane affected the city. New York started a city to teach Homeland Security. And those job opportunities pop up. Who are they going to hire first? Those individuals that
Mhm.
went to that school will work in the city. They know that community. Prince George's County has it. Mark, where exactly is it? Is it out in the Temple Hills area, over there in that
Out
area? I
towards the
forgot.
Seward High School.
Oh, okay. But see, and I'll say this, Mark was very instrumental in getting that done.
Thank you. And Mark, did you have anything else before we let you all go?
Nope, just thank you for having us. And like I
Thank
said,
you.
it takes this to get it started and to keep the ball rolling. So thank you for the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Enjoy the rest of y'all's evening. Take care.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And we certainly hope this discussion helps residents better understand what preparedness should look like and encourage leaders to ask um, harder questions before the next emergency, not after it. So, how do you all feel, team?
No, it was very informative,
It
and
was.
it validates that what the frustrations that residents in Prince George's County were feeling and were expressing on our page are warranted. Um, so I just hope our elected officials listen.
Yeah, I thought it was a great conversation. I think that we get a better understanding of what this county government's emergency preparedness um, effort is. Who went to the Council of Governments meeting to talk about the regional preparedness and what is Metro's role in this now. And I just think there are a lot of moving parts that have been missed and ignored. And you know, I I think that everybody's concerns are warranted. I also wanted to mention the seniors who were stranded, the people, it was mentioned about people with disabilities. Um, Take care of your families. I don't understand. I mean, if you don't have family in this area, fine. But people need to not be stubborn. Pack up your overnight bag and go stay with the daughter or the son whose lifestyle you may not agree with. But guess what? You won't be alone and you won't be stuck in your house.
And Levon, let me
No, wait a
mention.
minute. I just
Oh,
want
go
to
ahead. I'm
make
sorry.
a suggestion. Bunk up with your good girlfriends. Why would you want to not be prepared to and be by yourself? At least get your friends together and cook and prepare and be together so that you're not stuck alone. I just and let me just say one more thing. I want to do a public shout out to Belinda Queen and her crew of teenagers who went out for several days cleaning driveways and stairs, steps, and parking spaces. And to the people who gave contributions for that, thank you. Those young people did great work. She even went out to the lady who was looked like she might have been a wheelchair.
Yeah, she
Um,
was house. Yeah, house.
yeah,
Yeah.
she couldn't get her caregivers couldn't reach her. And they went over and Belinda got some people to clear them out. So shout out to the queen.
All
I'm
right,
done.
Yes,
Belinda.
indeed.
I just wanted to
Donna.
mention too, for people who may not know, if there's someone in your home that requires, for example, dialysis, you can get on record with the county to be able to get your street cleared sooner, and if and you'll be on a list of people for a major medical where you have to go out. You can't do it inside. So, just so people know that, they can get on the list, dial 311 and tell them you want to
And
be on the
hold
list. If you, but
and
you,
pray.
yeah, really, if they answer. But they, they will provide you with the information because having
Mhm.
assisted living, we were cleared once we got on the list.
Yeah.
So,
And that's what I was talking about, what the county needs to do as it pertains to taking care of our seniors, our evolutionary elders, as well as I like to call them, and also the other vulnerables, persons in the vulnerable population, with having our Department of Health and Social Services, having a volunteer registry where people who not just, need dialysis, but other, major illnesses or,
right.
chronic diseases who may need that assistance, so they can be taken care of and put on that VIP route that a lot of the elected officials have. But not only that, but to make sure, because in an emergency, if they have to get out and can't, and if it's not snow, perhaps we need to call the guard or the fire department or anybody else in order to go and get, to check on them because they have the equipment and to be able to traverse all types of roadways. But this was certainly helpful. We have people in the chat saying that, they are definitely going to take some of these questions back. This live was helpful, and that they're going to go ask the chair and the vice chair in their upcoming meeting, exactly about preparedness, because for so long we've been bamboozled by government and they have not been listening to the officials. And we have people, like the gentleman we had on this call, running these shows, and we would
Mhm.
be better off, than we were, because this should have scaled from a DPWT mission to a full blown out emergency,
Absolutely.
All
with
hands on deck. All
yeah, all
hands
hands
on
on
deck.
deck.
That's right.
Exactly,
Can I
and
say
that
something
did not
too?
take place. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, Mr. Charles Sharp and Mr. Dozier and Reverend Keller, man, what you brought to the table today in terms of overall emergency preparedness was awesome. I even learned some things about what to do. But I just have to say this to our county government officials, inclusive of our uh, school system officials. I know for a fact, because I work for both entities, that there are emergency prepared
Absolutely.
snow procedures. In fact, for Prince George's County Public Schools, I wrote that emergency procedure. It was called a Plan A. They have not done it since 2013 because people are lazy and told their boss that I don't want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to ride the thoroughfares in the streets to report back to you so you can report back to the superintendent of schools so he won't look like an ass so he can call the news channel and make some safety calls. And this is a pet peeve for me, and I just want to make sure that we hit that today on the show before we get off, and as well as for DPW and the transit bus system in the what is it, the paratransit, which moves the elderly and the people who
Mhm.
have handicap needs. If you don't clear the roads, I don't care what kind of emergency prepared situations we have. If they can't get out and get to their dialysis, they can't get out to wherever they need to go, they can die. Simply as that.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So
You know the
I just
Mhm.
wanted to be heard by the county officials that I know we beating you up. I know people getting on you about this situation, but sometimes we got to get smoked to go through a learning process to do better. Now, when will we have another major storm like this again? We don't know. But
Hmm.
if we do have it, we have to do better than what we did today. And if we have employees that we are paying over six figures to get out there on the roads and manage the roads and give information back to the
Get
people
out there.
about how we're supposed to move, you need to get out there. And if you can't get
you
out
know the
there, then
sad
don't let
point about
nobody
But
this.
that
with
would
it.
have been ice
You
skating
know the
this
sad
time.
point about this was the
Not
fact that it was
necessarily
the
at first.
news.
I'm just being
It,
funny.
the sad part about this, it was the news who was doing a lot of the coordinating between
Hmm.
residents and DPWT and the administration to get their roads plowed. Like,
Hmm.
they were saying, hey, reach out to us and we can help, because the chains had broken down. And that's a part of communication when you have, it's a breaking continuity of operations and governance. That 311 call center had, failed. The people were stuck and stranded, and they had to call Channel 7 and,
Sherman.
and everybody else, and that's it's the unfortunate part because if this had been a different disaster, how would they have responded in kind? And that's the concern that I have because these are a test and a marker of, and I'm not just talking, people, please understand the snow and the ice, that's something totally separate from, that's the field operations. But there are other things, part of operations that has to be taken care of in place. And being able to communicate with your constituency, that's pivotal and crucial. And it's not like comm systems went down. The communication just wasn't there and being able to track the routes and determine exactly who went where and when and what roads were still up. I mean, it was a complete
Well,
and utter breakdown and failure.
Sherman, let's be honest, because there were too many filming crews out there going to individual homes to film and show what we did at
Yeah,
individual
yeah.
homes. There was
The
just too
response had
much.
stopped
No, well, yeah, well, the response had
and they
stopped,
switched
but
over to the seniors.
yeah, well, but the communications was more of look who we just plowed.
Right,
Look who we
right,
just
Hmm.
plowed. It was
right.
more of going to targeted people who they knew would agree would be part of their next film to show
Mhm.
Hmm.
on their own on
Hmm.
Facebook pages. So that's
Yeah.
it was no more about communicating with us. It was all about damage
Hmm.
control.
Right.
And
Yeah.
guys, I think a rule of thumb in terms of our streets is major thoroughfares. Our county, from what I saw, and in my training, they let the snow come, and they may have plowed a little bit, but they let the snow keep coming, and then they waited, and then they let the sleet and
Yeah.
ice come down on the snow. That's
Right.
what
They
made
said
it
that they
so
was going to
difficult.
stop until after the
Right.
storm that actually
Right.
finished.
No,
That was the bad part
no,
about it.
that is only something that you should do when you know the forecast is only calling for snow. Period. Snow,
Yeah.
soft drifting snow. But when you're calling for sleet and ice, a hard sleet and ice on top of snow, you would have been ahead of yourself had you kept plowing the snow streets. And then when the ice and stuff came, it might have been a little bit better. But you stop and let all of it compound on top of each other and then freeze overnight. If it melt a little bit, then it
Well,
freezes again.
They said
that
call
sound
us
like their
24
plan,
hours.
but that sound like that was their plan, even though the news was saying go out there and plow every hour. You better get out there and
Right.
shovel every hour. But
Listen.
their plan was let's just wait till it's over.
Well, that's because I think they
Terrible
didn't
mistake.
have the money and the manpower, so they called themselves
Hmm.
probably taking a shortcut. But I want to mention two things
But
that are
communicate that with us. Let us don't I
And
want lower your expectations, our
yeah,
expectations
but
rather.
and
Let us
then
know that
but
But
Sherman,
how you have
come
a
on.
party at a
I was going to
hotel
say, come on,
when
Sherman.
I'm just saying.
so let me
Okay.
I just want to bring up two things. One is it was mentioned about the HOAs and cul-de-sacs. And
Mhm.
there seemed to have been, and I want this on record because I hope somebody will address this. Cul-de-sacs seem to have not been plowed. Okay.
hmm
Number two, HOAs, I thought, had the responsibility of plowing their streets except for the county road. Most communities have a main road that's a county road that runs through their neighborhood. I think what also failed is there used to be a program where, like my community, when you come into my community, that is the county road and it veers off to the right into another road. So what they did was they contracted our landscapers and snow people to do the county road so that the county could focus elsewhere. I don't think they're doing that anymore. The last thing I wanted to say, Lord, I done forgot my last point. Hold up. Don't rush me. Um, oh snap, I
Okay,
forgot.
well, let me say this
We're-
about
Pass.
let me say this about the cul-de-sac because we actually spoke to the people when they came to our cul-de-sac and sprayed that half a bucket of sand. They told us that they were told that they were not to go and plow in cul-de-sacs because people park on the side of the road and they're afraid of hitting cars. Even
Right.
though I saw later on when they were doing their glorified videos, I saw cul-de-sacs being plowed and cars on the road.
And T, that is one of the concerns of your municipalities, your school systems, and your governments when they go out to plow in neighborhoods. That's understandable to a certain degree, but in the future, maybe we could put something out to the communities to say that if you can possibly park your vehicle in your driveways, and you don't have to park on the side of the road, as many cars as you can get to do that. That helps us,
We had one
negotiate the
car.
street and
There
do a
was
That's
more
one
right.
Well,
car.
efficient.
We
listen,
had
first
one
of all,
car.
they said they
I
didn't
hear
have a
you.
plan. The
I hear you.
plows were able to, maneuver as they were supposed to in the cul-de-sac. So pretty much they were asked out. And
What?
that's the unfortunate part.
Well, this
Hold
is
on
the
just a
other
second.
thing, y'all.
Hold on a second,
My
Donna, just
mom
a
is
second.
in a
Just a second.
senior community, and they plowed the senior community, plowed the main, street area, but they had parking spaces. That snow was pushed up to their parking spaces. So now you got folks who got to step over a mound like this to go in, get in their car, and then they can't get out unless they plow that snow from behind their cars. How do I know? That's where I was yesterday. And my back hurt now. But they only going to do a certain amount. They don't plow out the cars. They just plow so people can drive on there. And
That's
again,
unacceptable.
that's
What
what
the
I'm
heck are
thinking.
they paying
So
And
for?
that's why I think there needs to be a community thing so we can get all the liars in a room. Because if the expectation is that they're to clear that parking lot and they're paying rent to have that done, then we need to know. We need to know, bring receipts, because that should not have happened. My mom is just getting out yesterday. And I finally called the guy and paid him to come over because my back started hurting. And it's not acceptable. But I think it calls for some communication.
Well, you know what? Okay, and Sherman, I'm sorry, but let's let me see. It rained the first. I mean, it snowed the first winter I was here. They came and snow and plowed our cul-de-sac. There was no problem,
Right.
and they moved the snow away from the cars because there's a side of the road that is nobody parks. So I mean, they did smart plowing. And I like what Mr. Sharp had said and what Mr. Dozier said. Some of these guys, I thought that they were drunk,
Right.
because they were picking up snow and dumping it on sidewalks and I have a large senior community that I live in that had already been shoveled by seniors, and they dumped the snow right on the sidewalk.
See, that's unacceptable. I know what I was going to say. So Woodyard Road, y'all know I always talk about I live in the forgotten part of District 25 and District 9, but shout out to Quincy Barra B, the lady that's running for county, for, I don't know what she running for. She running for something. In
Congress.
Congress. Anyway, Woodyard Road is a snow emergency route. Now, mind you, they have never done a great job clearing snow on Woodyard Road. It's 2 lanes, y'all. We do have some turn lanes.
I have nowhere to put it.
No, that's they do. We don't even have sidewalks on Woodyard Road.
Right.
So my thing is, if the snow emergency roads are not properly cleared, then why would we expect side roads to be properly cleared? That's the state. They didn't even try to go along one side of the road and the other side. They plowed straight down the middle over the yellow lines. And so you're driving like this.
Absolutely.
With oncoming traffic. So I contacted Senator Nick Charles, and I want to give him a shout out. And he got on our Facebook page and he started interacting with people, asking them where they live. He didn't say, well, that's not my district or whatever. And he got people streets cleared out, and he had them to come and clean the turn lane coming into my neighborhood, because I live at the bottom of a hill with a right turn, and I had to stop in traffic to turn because it was a 90-degree angle to get onto my street, and I wasn't having it. I got young adults in my house. I don't want them out here driving in unsafe conditions. So the state needs to be addressed as well. I've never seen it like this.
Sherman, didn't the bus hit you?
Yes.
A bus hit you?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sideswipe me.
But your county executive apologized.
My input and our other members' input, and that those officials and others that are listening, we're adults. Let's resolve the issue. Let's address those most important issues. We're adults. Mm-hmm. It's not personal.
Nope.
Right. No, it's
Absolutely.
not. It's
Absolutely.
not. Listen,
That's
we have
so
to
true.
understand. We have to understand what Mr. Sharp just said is absolutely right. It's not personal, but we have to understand that, and this is no excuse. This is a learning process. We don't get this type of snow in this area every year like this, and we have not bought the type of equipment that is needed to clear a snow and ice storm this massive. So we got caught with our pants down. and it's a learning process that some kind of way, budgetary wise, we're just going to have to make a couple of purchases
Well,
of those
well,
type
see,
of
the the
equipments
the
that we
thing
need.
about it is you don't have to purchase that equipment, and that's what people in
Right.
emergency response
Well, no,
understands.
I
FEMA,
got you.
one moment, please, let me finish.
Well, you
You
cut
know, I'm
me
just going to
off
give you
first, brother.
eh, to to give you the answer about this because essentially, you know, that's a myth. Everybody thinks that you have to buy this equipment, and you don't. A lot of this is rented,
You
you
didn't
know,
let me
and
finish
also
though.
shared through it. Go ahead, Derek.
I agree totally with you. I'm just saying, but I still think as a government municipal system and a school system, not just in this county, but around the surrounding counties, if we're going to work together and have emergency preparedness together in our close states, it would not hurt to have some of those vehicles and things that we need in this type of situation that we own. Yes, we still can go to the bases, to the fire department, whoever has it, but it doesn't hurt to have that type of machine or trucks or what have you for yourself, just in case those other entities can't help you at that time. That's all I'm saying. I totally agree with you, Sherman. I totally agree with Mr. Sharp, Mr. Dozier. But during my tenure, I used to always ask the school system to try to push for some better and stronger type of equipment. But the answer was, we don't get snow like that. So when you do get it like that, you can't do anything. That's why Barack Obama laughed at us at the time. We had about what, an inch or two of snow on the ground, and we called the whole day closed. He's like, we don't do this in Chicago, but they got the equipment to
They,
move.
they don't do it in Canada either.
All right, I'm done.
I could get like Ron. So, to answer your question, again, you don't have to purchase this equipment. A lot of this stuff can be leased. You know, there are some belts and different companies all across Prince George's County and the surrounding areas. Now, some of the things that you can do is go to EMAC and the different other organizations that are out there where you can actually share resources. But again, since you know the greater Mid Atlantic was experiencing this episode, you know, it would be challenging to borrow equipment from the surrounding states. But you have to look at agreements and say who's next door. Again, this was a week that we had enough time to get whatever equipment that we needed to do. We also understood that, you know, and it's one thing to have the equipment, but you need the personnel and the manning to operate it. So that's
Well, that's
another
true.
situation that wasn't that, you know, that was a problem. But again, you know, when I worked at FEMA at the National Integration Center, one of the last things that I was doing before I left was creating that catalog that explains to everybody every available tool and resources that's out there and how much it costs hourly. So that is
Ye-
something that a lot of, you know, the state, the counties can look at as well, because essentially
Right.
right now we're already doing emergency procurements. They just talked about, you know, trying to get more people hired now. So, you know, I always say you're going to pay on the front end or you're going to pay on the back end, but you're going to pay. And for us talking about having, you know, not having the money or the resources when people are in this outrage about $40,000 being spent at a hotel, regardless if it
Mhm.
was,
Right.
you know, because again, those of us who have worked in emergencies have slept on cots and have used baby wipes to shower. And I tell
Well,
people
Mhm.
that, you know, this was just, it was unnecessary. And
well,
I think Charles has something he want to say as well.
No, 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 no. I'm
well,
Oh,
listening.
you
but
did? Okay.
Sherman, not only this type of emergencies, Donna, we know in the IT world,
Mhm.
if the network's not up, that's an emergency. We've slept on cots and sofas.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I think Mr. Keller brought up, which and I didn't even think about, is leveraging what you do have, the big type of trucks that you do have, leveraging your
Yes.
trash trucks and putting the plows on those. I thought that was an excellent idea,
Mhm.
and I didn't
Absolutely.
I don't know, I didn't see anything like that. So
The
and
other
one
thing
of
is leveraging
but wait a minute,
people
hold on.
out of state
Well,
too.
but here's one of the problems I wanted to say with our government. We don't have people with experience
Ha.
in these
Right.
areas.
Right.
That is our big problem right now.
Absolutely.
We
And
just
that's
don't
the
have
key.
people with experience.
That's a key point, Tanya. That's why this situation right here had to happen in so many terms, so that people in this area with a storm of that magnitude can learn. Now we understand what happens if we're not prepared, and we can make some moves towards being better prepared, and not just like we all said, we ain't just trying to beat people
Oh,
up.
we don't have to keep making explanation. We know.
Right. Yeah.
Because you know what, this is
Hold
where
on.
I agree
Yeah,
with what
boy,
Levon is.
we have a terrible habit of not allowing each other to finish each other's
I'm
sentence. So
sorry.
no, go ahead. Go
No,
ahead. You got it.
go ahead.
I'm just saying it is a learning process. This was a learning process. As Mr. Sharp and them said, they prepare long ahead of time. We should have been prepared long ahead of time, better than what we were, but we don't usually get a magnitude of snow and ice like this. So now that we have gotten that, somebody should be taking snapshots of this situation. That's all I'm
Derek,
saying.
I'm a push back. I'm a push back on that one
That's fine.
because we have people at the executive level. So to me, when you are at the executive level, there's no learning experience on something this elementary.
Absolutely.
And
Right.
I think Mr. Dozier made that, and Mr. Sharp have made that very
All of them
strong.
made it clear.
And clear. There's no such thing. We don't have OJT for executive level positions. You come into that position with the experience.
No
Because
training
when
here.
you don't, people die. When you don't, people houses burn down. When you don't, people have heart attacks and you can't get emergency rescue to them. So we don't have time for that.
From that standpoint, I agree.
So on the first night or the second, it might have been the second night of the snow, that Monday night, there was an emergency in my neighborhood at the cul-de-sac, and the fire truck was able to pull all the way in, and I guess backed out because I didn't see them leave. But they had no way they could have turned around because of the tacky plow job that had been done. I live in an HOA community. That's not the county's problem. Then the medics came. And they parked in front of my house. Y'all know where I live. They parked in front of my house. They backed into the neighborhood again, from up the hill. They backed into the street. And then they parked there and went and walked on the ice to the house that needed service. Now, suppose the medics had fallen.
Got hurt.
Suppose somebody needed to get out. My husband is an essential employee. So while they were serving the house, let's say it was around the time he had to go to work, he wouldn't have been able to get out. So my thing is this, I'm not going to apologize or give a pass to people who have aspired to be in this position for as long as they have been adults in Prince George's County. I know for a fact that she has wanted to be the county executive since 2007. And I know that because of my conversation with her. So I don't have time to make apologies. I will not make apologies. They make too much money. They too evil acting. They do retaliation. They are dismissing employees who have FMLAs because they want them to be in the workplace. But you can't get your employees to work.
Right.
So you put them up in a hotel. You can't pacify and make accommodations for some employees while you putting other ones on the street. If you're not qualified for the job,
hit the road.
You shouldn't have the job.
Right.
Every agency director and DCAO, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, has to be interviewed by the council and confirmed. So that means they are passing people through with they probably have no understanding of what's acceptable. They got a CAO in the council who don't know what he's doing. He ain't qualified, David Murray. So we have a dysfunctional executive level of government. And I personally, it is personal for me because I pay taxes. Well, my husband
Me too.
and my family pay taxes because I don't work. So they pay taxes. And so because we are human beings, we cannot disassociate our humanity from the work and the services that we need, just like they don't disassociate themselves from their paychecks. Now, if they want to do the job and put somebody else's name on their paycheck, then it won't be personal. It'll just be professional. But if they got money being dropped every 2 weeks into their bank account, I almost
For nothing.
said something I can't say on a video, y'all. But if they can do that, then I can call it out. And I'm sorry. That's just how I feel. People can say it's negative, it's angry, it's bitter, it's complaining. It is concerning. My daddy lives with me, so I don't have no elders to worry about.
Well,
I'm done.
but
Yeah, well, we
Levon,
hope
but
this
no,
discussion helps
I'm sorry.
residents better
Let me say one
understand
last
what
thing.
preparedness should look like and encourages leaders to ask harder questions
Sherman,
before the
I
next
just
emergency, not after it.
wait a
This
minute,
has been CAG Chat.
Sherman.
Stay
I want to make one more
informed, stay
comment.
prepared, and love, you have 30 seconds.
Okay. No, I just want to say to Levon, I understand your fear because I had a fear because my granddaughter, and Donna knows, who almost died a couple times because of asthma attacks. There was no way an ambulance could get up in our cul-de-sac. And I'm sitting up here worrying, how much do you have in your inhaler? How much do you have? And we can't get out and do anything. So these things are real.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you
Thank
for
you,
letting me have
Sherman.
my moment.
Thank you,
Y'all
Sherman.
know.
This has been CAG
I
Chat.
love
Stay
you,
informed,
Sherman.
stay prepared, and hold your government accountable. Y'all take care.
Peace.
Peace.
Good night. Woo!
Oh.